Yeah, it's super crazy that it's such a big deal, especially when they're, the thing is with the whole, any kind of law enforcement or anything like that, if you lowered the standard at all, and so, and that
Right,
person, one of those people, like did something they weren't supposed to, that'd be the first thing that they would
right.
bring up and be like, I can't believe you
Oh,
lowered the standard.
hmm.
So yeah, that's pretty interesting. But so we're back up and we're ready to go. So hey, Adrian, thanks again for being on the Former Action Guys podcast. For people that might tune into this, we are live on YouTube, and I'm going to be taking questions. So if there's any questions you have, type them in the comment box, and I'll ask those as as it's necessary, or at towards the end of the podcast. So you were in the Marine Corps as a military police officer. You spent how many years were you in the Marine Corps?
4 years.
Years, okay. And how'd you like it, man? Why'd you decide to join as a military police officer?
As a kid, I'd wanted to be a border patrol agent, and knowing I wasn't going to go off to college, I figured some military police experience might
Mm-hmm.
help me get into the border
Yeah,
patrol. And so that was my plan going through high school, and join the Marine Corps. And I enjoyed it. I'm sure everybody's got stories of the day they hated it or a couple of days but overall, looking back, I had a really good time. Um, and I would venture to say most Marines get out that
yeah,
way. There's always a few bad days. Everybody has them. It's not a daycare thing.
yeah.
Um,
It's a lot of times too. You know what it is that guys join when they're 17 and 18. This is the first like real like adult job they've had, and
right,
the expectations are higher. And obviously, the Marine Corps, the military in general, not only can they like they can dictate your whole life. So if you mess something up at work, it's not like
correct.
you can go home and deal with it. Like you go back and you're at work all the time. So yeah,
Right,
and I think a lot of people get out of the Marine Corps and then realize they're like, man, that's like not a bad job to have, and they realize how many similarities are actually between the military and the Marine Corps and the civilian sector and stuff like that. So
right, right. And the leadership that they tell you that you're going to learn, you do pick it up. The leadership skills, uh, the attention to
mm-hmm,
detail. That comes into play later
for
in life.
sure.
Um, Supervisors look for that. Um, it's it's like I said. I think I would venture to say most Marines getting out, the day they get out, they're like, man, that was tough, or whatever. And then you look back at it a few years later, and for myself anyway, I had a good
Yeah,
time.
yeah.
Yeah, you, I went overseas for a year. I went to Iwakuni for a year, away from my wife at the time, and that was no
Yeah.
fun.
How
But I did fun stuff
how'd you
there.
like
I
Iwakuni? I
went.
think I've heard people say that's the secret of the Marine Corps. Getting stationed out there is like one of the best places that you could be, but no one really knows about it because it's really only for the air wing.
Right. It's a real small base. As an MP, I remember you first get there and they give you a few days of in service
Mm-hmm.
training and then pull you out on the intersection to direct traffic at the end of the
Oh
day.
yeah,
And all the traffic operating on the other side of the road.
really
So
confusing. That's funny.
yeah, yeah. But I was there maybe a couple weeks and they sent me to Korea to Operation Team Spirit. Uh, I think it was like Team Spirit 89 or
Really,
something. Sounded like 1,000 years
that's
ago.
funny.
But yeah, so I went there and Korea also had a good time there. Stayed in a tent as you
Mm.
know, for uh, Operation Team Spirit, and I was there about 90 days. And even while I was there, they sent me to a little island named Jeju-do. It's an army training base where they do Australian rappelling, which was a lot of
I've
fun.
never done Australian rappelling.
Yeah.
The heads down. How'd you like
Yep.
doing that? Was that like? It's got to be a
It,
different feeling.
they build you up for it. They build you up for it because you go there and they take you out there to show you where you're going to
Mm-hmm.
rappel, and it looks like it's a mile up in the sky. And then they work you that way. You start off regular rappelling, and then you start doing Australian rappel on an angled platform, and then you finally go vertical. And then the last day you're there, it's like a comprehensive test. You have to build a rope bridge across a ravine and get across and run a few miles, and then finally you get to the cliff where you're going to rappel, and it's a 300-foot rappel, and halfway down you have to change ropes. So that's a
Oh,
crazy
really?
part. But no, it was a blast. It was an awesome time. It's a little bitty army training base of some kind. I think that's all they do there is rappel training.
Huh. That's pretty interesting. I've
But
never,
yeah,
like I said, I've done rappelling, I've done spy rigging, all that kind of stuff, but I've never done heads down
right.
like that. So as a military police officer, that's kind of a strange job, right? Because well, here's an opinion from somebody that's not a military police officer that knows them. How can you how how can it be a good idea to give an 18 or 19-year-old a badge and a gun and be like, hey, you're in charge of like enforcing stuff here?
Right. And my first duty station was there at Camp Pendleton at the
Mm-hmm.
first FSSG, and I think that kind of helped a lot of us because it was a field unit. So you're doing we go out to Del Mar and stay a few nights
Mm-hmm.
there on the beach doing uh, route reconnaissance and that kind of stuff, or we go and operate. But the guys doing the base work there at the gates and the traffic enforcement, that kind of stuff. Yeah, it's you leave MP school, and yeah, you're right. You're 17, 18, maybe 19, 20 if you're an
That's
old
funny.
timer. But yeah, you're right. And the only time I worked was a little bit of the base type MP was there at Iwakuni, and again, it was a small base, so it's all kind of slow pace compared to something like Camp Pendleton, which is just like a
Yeah.
big city, like any big city,
Yeah.
where they see it
How
all.
did you did you run into any weird like I don't know, cases or whatever you want to call them as a military police officer?
No, again at Iwakuni, you take your time getting to the club, the E Club, when there was a big bar fight because it's kind of tough running in
Yeah.
fighting a bunch of Marines that are fighting, trying to separate them. But you kind of take your time getting there, and then by the time you
Yeah.
got there, they'd be settling down a little bit. But no, there wasn't a lot of actual like police work. Again, I would guess the guys
Yeah.
on the base, they would see the all kinds of
Yeah. So you got out and
crime.
then you were recalled to go to the Gulf War. Did you make it back in time to go to the Gulf War?
No, I got recalled, and then I went back to Camp Pendleton, and we were there about 30 days, and just getting shots and going through all kinds of training and administrative stuff. And then, if you can remember,
No,
I don't know
no.
if you were there or not, but it kind of it the bombing hit hard, and then it kind of
Yeah.
tapered off right away. And then they said, "Hey, man, if anybody needs to go home, you can." So I was hoping the border patrol was calling soon, and I ended up going home. And yeah, I think most of those guys ended up being released like
Yeah, the war
45, 60
ended
days
up not
into it.
being as long as they thought it was going to be. I think I actually once it kicked off, it was
Right.
like a week long. Um, yeah, were you bummed out that you didn't get to go?
I was excited, and of course, my mother couldn't understand how I was excited. But I'd also been getting calls from my buddies that we had
Mm-hmm.
just gotten out a year ago, a year before that. So I was getting calls from, "Hey, I got orders. Have you gotten yours?" I said, "No, I haven't gotten mine." And finally got them. And yeah, my mother and my ex-wife, my wife at the time, she couldn't
Yeah, it's a
understand
different
how
mentality,
excited
man.
about it.
It's you got to have that
Right,
mentality, I guess.
right,
So
right.
when you decided to get out and pursue that career,
Right.
in the border patrol, um, can you kind of tell us about the hiring process that you went through and maybe how it's changed today?
And when I was in Iwakuni, I filled out what used to be an interest card, and you
Mm-hmm.
mail it in, and then they send you the application when they have not vacancies, but when they're going to have a hiring process
Yeah.
system open up. So I got that and filled it out, and it was and I've seen it recently, and it's funny because it's all typed out on hard copy, so it's kind of funny to see that kind of stuff. Sent it in, and then they go they called me for uh, an oral interview, and you go in, and there's three border patrol agents, and they ask you questions. What would you do in this scenario or that scenario?
Mm-hmm.
And if you pass that, then they continue on with medical. Uh, uh, I think they gave us a drug screening back then, and once you get cleared, you just wait. They tell you, well, okay, you're cleared. Next process, when there are some vacancies, we'll call. And sure enough, I got a call, and I was offered a job in Deming, and I had to respond to him. And I told him, yes, I'll take it.
Where's Deming at?
Deming is about 100 miles west of El Paso on Interstate 10.
Okay. Okay.
Deming, New Mexico. Deming, New Mexico.
Is that like? I mean, you're from that around this area, so were you were you happy with that location? Not happy? Like,
I had probably driven through there as a kid, but I'd never been to Deming,
okay.
so I didn't know. Not till after I got out of the academy did I hit that way, and found it was about 12,000 people in the county. I think is what it was back then, something like that, 10,
Oh,
12,000.
that's funny.
Not a real big place,
Yeah. Yeah.
but
You know, do you find a lot of people that are in the border patrol are from the southwestern part of the United States, from like near border areas?
yes, yeah, it's the majority of the people I would say
Really?
were especially back then. Now it's I guess the job market, the uh, that kind of stuff has changed. Now there's people from all over the
Yeah.
country, but 25 years ago it was a lot of people from the Southwest, and some of that probably has to do with the Spanish language portion
Mm,
of having to go to learn the Spanish language in the academy. And I omitted that in the hiring process. You did, even when I signed up, uh, you had to take a Spanish test or uh, a mock language exam
okay.
before your oral interview.
Really? Okay. Is
Yeah,
that still a? I don't you still have to learn Spanish, but not you don't have to show up no understanding it.
correct. If you can pass that mock language,
Okay.
yeah, so you can pass that mock language test back then, and I'm not sure if they still have that now. They might still have that now. And then yeah, once you get to the academy, you'll learn an operational type, like tactical type Spanish, more law enforcement rather than the uh, entire Spanish language, of course.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
Um, you know, for someone like me, like I always, border patrol sounds like a decent job. Like I think it'd be cool. Like not a bad job. But man, I'm horrible with languages. Like trying
right.
to learn Spanish. I had to try to learn Italian last year. I was in college last year as well, and I was on my second year of Italian, and it was just tough, man. Like picking up those languages for me, I'm just not. That's just not me. So it's tough for somebody like
And
that.
it is, and it is. It's a complete different board patrol academy if you go in there not knowing Spanish. More so years back. Now it's I think they've kind of tapered the Spanish down some,
Yeah,
but back then it would be a completely different academy. And I told my classmates that I had the utmost respect for them, having to learn Spanish and everything else we had to learn.
yeah.
Already knowing Spanish was like half the
I
load.
would say that's just another stressor, right thrown on you
Yeah.
right there. Um, yeah, man. What so in the academy? What kind of stuff were you guys learning, and how did you think that it translated out to your actual field work?
Well, pretty much the entire academy session, you work on your Spanish,
Mm-hmm.
and then at the beginning it's a lot of law, and then once you'll start doing some PT, and then move into driving also, and firearm driving and firearms are there's a lot of firearms training. I think I told you in that message that Border Patrol has historically been known to put out a real good pistoleros. The pistol team of the Border Patrol has always competed and done very well. There's historically the Border Patrol has been known to have good marksmen,
Yeah,
just like the Marine Corps.
yeah. And you said you guys got a 357 out of the academy.
Yeah, when I graduated, they were still issuing 357s. We later transitioned to Beretta, and then later to an H&K semi-automatic.
Which one did you like
But
the best?
I like I said, I came out with a 357, and not a real long time after I went to a Sig Sauer 45, a P220
Okay.
that I really liked. I carried that for a lot of years till we were mandated to transition.
Hmm.
And the Beretta, a lot of guys didn't like them, but I never had any problems with mine.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, it's because a lot of guys can't shoot. You know, it's the pistol's problem, not theirs, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Um,
Yep.
what other kind of weapons training do you guys do? Just pistols or?
Um, we carried an 870 shotgun, and When I first got to Deming, we had some Mini 14s.
Oh, really? Okay.
But yeah, those kind of got phased out, and then we went to M16s
Okay. Okay.
uh, or M4s.
Nice. So once you're in the border patrol, like, you finish up the academy. How long is the academy?
It was about 16 weeks. I
Okay.
think it's a little bit less
Um,
now.
what was the hardest part of the academy for you?
Um, well, the law, I stayed in relatively good shape out of the Marine Corps, so the
Hmm.
PT wasn't bad, the Spanish wasn't bad, driving was awesome, firearms was great. The law was a challenging part, um, but it's uh, I guess a little different for everybody. But again, knowing Spanish,
Yeah.
it's a completely different academy. The guys that went in there to learn Spanish, they had all the verb conjugation plastered all over their wall on paper just
Yeah.
to try and help them memorize it. Yeah,
That's
it's
tough.
crazy for those guys.
What kind of driving training do you guys
Yeah,
do then?
we do pursuit driving, and then what they called NEVO, the non-emergency vehicle operation, like parking and just going through the cones and
Hmm.
that kind of stuff at a slower speed. Day-to-day driving. We did skid control, where I had a pretty neat car that they could raise the rear differential off the ground with like caster wheels under it, so it'd spin
Yeah.
completely around. Uh, what they'd wet
Yeah.
what they call the skid pan. They'd wet the asphalt and get you to spin out
Yeah.
and
The
try and
Marine Corps sends
recover
some guys to that school
a
now
little bit of
to learn that.
right. Yeah. And then you do a little bit of off-road driving, not much compared to what you do out in the field. That's where you really learn uh, how to operate a vehicle off-road, because they didn't make much time for it
Hmm.
back then. Now they're doing a little bit more, uh, but most of it just depends on the terrain where you're at, because you can learn how to go off-road in the mud and in Ajo, Arizona, in the sand.
Aha.
That's
I've
not going to
actually
help you
been to
one bit.
Aha, right outside of Gila Bend.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I've
Yes.
I got a
Yeah.
flat tire going out to the bombing range in Gila Bend, and I had to call for a tow
Oh.
truck, and some dude with like a pickup truck and like a flatbed trailer came and picked me up from Aha, and it was a whole thing. Yeah, I've been
Mm.
out there. Yeah, man, what a crazy place to live on the border like that, and like so for me being out, having worked on the border, as a on the different training ranges and stuff that they have out at the Barry Goldwater range complex. I'm sure you're familiar with.
Right.
Um,
Hmm. Yes.
it's crazy that people try to cross that on foot in the summertime. It's just like how is that even a
Yeah.
thing? Like
You can't carry
it's
enough water to
so. I
make it
mean,
across there.
dude, it's so hot. I mean, we've had one of guys from my team. Actually, my team was out. I wasn't there that time. My team was out training, and they had detained a guy, an illegal immigrant that was coming across. They think he was actually the Coyote. So they detained him and then called the border patrol, obviously from the station down the road there, to come pick him up. But dude, and they're crossing an active bombing range. That those dudes are coming in and dropping like live
Right.
ordnance daily. That's just so crazy. So,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. And you're right about the heat. We during the summer, and I was out in Tucson for a year or so, and yeah, during the summer they have it's a humanitarian effort to get those people out of the desert.
mm-hmm.
Whenever people are apprehended out there, they are flown out of the area so that they don't try and cross again and end
So
up dying in the
okay, with
desert.
the desert crossings, what like you said, that's a humanitarian effort. There was a huge. It was controversial when they did it. I think it was in El Paso, right? They put up the border wall there, and people were saying that it it was inhumane because it was pushing people farther out into the desert. The people that were trying to cross farther out into the desert, which was kind
Right.
of the point to make it where it's like, hey, you don't want to try that. But at the same time, I mean, what's your take on that? And kind of how have you seen like the politics of securing the border kind of mutate over the years?
Well, when I first started, there were very few places that had any kind of significant
Mm-hmm.
fencing other than barbed wire. And You go to, like we'll take El Paso for example. They had probably 8 or 10, I would say 6 or 8
Okay.
foot chain link fence that you drive by it, and it had been repaired so much that it just the whole you couldn't tell what was original. You couldn't hardly find any original chain link. It
Mm-hmm.
was all just patches. Um, so they ended up starting places like that and replacing fencing. And the fencing, the Border Patrol didn't expect it to be
Yeah.
an end all silver bullet. It's a tool that we put in
Yeah.
there to slow people down. And they started where in the different types of uh, environments that we had, minutes to seconds in urban areas like
Mm-hmm.
El Paso or Nogales or San Diego out there, they seconds to minutes, and in
Yeah.
minutes the aliens are gone. So we put up barriers to slow them down enough for us to take the appropriate law
You know,
enforcement action.
it's funny you mentioned that, like the reaction time that you have to like detain somebody because
Right.
there was just again every week. I think it happens like every week. There was a like a I don't know how you say a panga boat or whatever that just came in on the beach in Encinitas
Oh
here
yeah.
in California, and
Mhm.
14 people got off. There
Right.
was actually two this week. The first one had I think 14 people that got off, and they ended up
Wow.
apprehending all of them because they got off the boat, ran up the beach and into a neighborhood, and then the residential neighborhood people were like, "Who
Oh.
the hell are all these people?" and started calling the cops. And then their cameras, they have Zoom or not Zoom, but Ring cameras and all that stuff. They use that to catch those guys. And
Right.
then another one just landed like yesterday, I think. And I don't know if they detained any
Wow.
of those guys though. I think they all got away. But it's just crazy, man. Like
Oh.
the penetrations that you see all along, even around
Right.
you go around the border wall and do something like that. But I think the people that don't like the idea of having the border wall are I I think they try to say like, oh look, a boat made it around. See, the wall's worthless, and it's like, dude, that's just one piece of a
Right.
huge
Right.
piece of security. Like the whole element. Like, can you explain kind of what are the different levels of security, the different types of security that you guys are using, like horseback patrols, foot patrols, to secure different parts of the border?
Right. And there's all kinds of
Yeah.
buzzwords of defense in depth, layered approach, all kinds of. But
Mm-hmm.
that's all on the line. You want as much time as you can, especially like I said in urban areas. You want to slow them down enough to where you'll see them climbing the fence and get an agent moving that way to make the arrest. Or if you have them retreating back to Mexico, you can get there in time to catch them before they return to Mexico. And there's all kinds of electronic equipment that they use and audiovisual equipment that they use, all kinds of
Yeah.
cameras, and everybody's seen them, I'm sure. Um, that you're right, it's just one part of a multi-tool uh,
Yeah. Okay.
enforcement.
Now you said you spent 14 years or so as a field agent. When you first showed up, first day on the job, what's that like? Like, what are they having you do? Are you standing at the border, checking people through the border, or are you actually going along the border wall itself or the border areas and ensuring their security?
Well, like I told you, I think on that paper, the information I sent you, the Border Patrol
Mm-hmm.
has a lot of similarities to the Marine Corps. The first day I was in the Border Patrol on duty, I went to El Paso to pick up tires for the other
New
trucks.
guy.
So
You thought
yeah,
you were going to be fighting
yeah,
the
I was a
cartel or
new
something,
guy.
and you're picking up
So
tires.
yeah, yeah, but no, no, they you after back then you get out of the academy and you still had two post academy exams you had to pass. So once a week you would meet with a post academy
Mm-hmm.
instructor and continue the lessons in law and Spanish only. And then the other days you would ride with a journeyman back
Yep.
then. Now they're called field training officers, but it was a journeyman that would take you around, and he would show you'd learn from
It's
him
me. Sorry.
or her, and then 2 weeks later you'd go to a different journeyman and learn from him or her. What they and they each every agent enjoyed doing most what they like to do, whether it was traffic observation or line watch or uh, farm and
Okay.
ranch check we used to do back then. We learn a little bit from each journeyman and put it together to become the
Yeah.
agent you end up
Now, what's
becoming.
like the most tedious job to have as like a new agent?
Um, well, back then at the end of shift, and we did back then there were no computers. There was I think the mission
Mm-hmm.
support specialist had a computer, and the patrol agent in charge had a computer, and that was it. Everything else was done on a typewriter. And then at the end of the day, you would all the aliens that were apprehended. You take the paperwork and as a new guy, and you'd enter them into the big log, the 205 log that tracked all the
Mm-hmm.
apprehensions throughout the month. So you had to handwrite all those in, and that was always the new guy's job. While and then at the beginning of the shift, you had to show up and get your vehicle ready and be ready for work when the briefing started, not
Yeah, yeah.
30 minutes later.
Now, what kind of
Especially
cases
as
were
the new
you
guy.
seeing as a field agent? You know, like what was like a day to day? Were you actively like securing the border, or were you
Um,
like actively pursuing criminals that had made it across?
and back then, times were a lot. The
Mm-hmm.
volume of traffic was a lot different. There were
Okay.
38 of us in Demi, uh, and we would apprehend maybe 250
Wow.
aliens a month. And so there wasn't a lot of traffic, but
That's not a lot. That's not a
we
lot.
would
That's funny. Yeah.
no, it's not. And we would work a little bit of traffic check, but most of it was farm and ranch, just because it was an agriculture area. Farm and ranch and line watch, where you'd go track aliens. Um, every now and then we'd get a vehicle load of aliens, and we'd try and prosecute that. But it wasn't real frequent. We had one prosecutions agent that you'd run it by him. Hey, how's this sound? Does it think the U.S. attorney will go on it? And he would give you his guidance. Yeah, let's write it up and we'll send it.
Mm-hmm.
See if the U.S. attorney takes it,
Yeah.
and then we'll go from there. But generally, it was just line watch, alien tracking, and with a
Yeah.
little bit of traffic check. Um, and then later we started building up. There was more of the traffic increase, so we need more staffing. We started getting some technology, and it just boomed from there. Uh, when I left, there was just under
When you
300
did
agents, I
you
believe,
see an
and that
uptick
was
in
it.
was there any major events where you're like
Oh,
all of a sudden there was an uptick in foot traffic trying to come across the border?
it shifted once other areas started getting better control. It started
Mm-hmm.
shifting it to the more rural
Yeah.
areas like we were at. And yeah, so it made a big difference what El Paso was doing and what Douglas
Mm-hmm.
and Nogales was doing. It pushed traffic our way. And then once we started getting traffic, it really our old boss used to say it was a perfect storm, and it really they hit us hard in the
Okay.
early 2000s. Uh, we were getting hit hard. Um, a lot of apprehensions to where the chief came out because we were getting concerned that we were having so many apprehensions that all the agents would get tied up to where we just about didn't have anybody to
Really?
respond to more traffic. And the chief came out and told us, hey, you got to
Mm-hmm.
deal with what you have in hand first.
Yeah, that's crazy,
You
man.
know,
It's like, well, we can't even. It's just an
and,
overwhelming amount where you can't even deal with it.
yeah. And if you get a chance, go by there at San Diego sector and talk to the PAO guys. See if they can show you pictures, and I know they will. Ask them to show you the pictures of the old soccer field and stuff. I know we were talking about it a little bit in late '80s, early '90s, where it was just as soon as the sun went down, it was just a
Really?
mass influx, and nobody wanted to be in that area. And now, last time I was out there, there was like a shopping mall
Oh, in
down
San
there,
Ysidro?
and very high color looking
Yeah,
houses.
yeah,
Yes, sir.
yeah. I've been down
All the way
there.
down there.
I was down there probably 2 years ago, maybe a year ago. I mean, I'm right by the border. I'm like 15 minutes from the border. But I've actually went down to the southern point, where it goes in the ocean right there. Probably about a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago,
Right.
something like that. There was something going on at the border. There was some kind of protesting at the border for something, and I wanted to go down and try to get some photos of the protest. And it's really interesting seeing
Right.
it go into the water right there, and seeing people on the other side of it and stuff like that. it's too bad that whole area is so polluted, because of the Tijuana River
Yeah.
Valley
Yeah.
or whatever you call it, the watershed
Right.
there. But it's a really nice area. And from my understanding, right on the other side of the fence is a tourist resort. That I don't know how they're doing now because Tijuana just had another record year of murders. I think.
No. Yeah.
I think they said there's like 1,500
Right.
people have been murdered in Tijuana this year so far, or something like that. Something crazy,
Wow.
man. Anyway, but back to your work on the border. You said that you held multiple jobs, horseback and stuff like that. When would do you guys have dedicated horseback or people on horseback, or is that something you call in as necessary if you're in like rugged terrain?
No, and that's what it was. You'd be on a like TDY. You'd be on detail for the
Okay.
horse patrol unit. You had a supervisor that had like logistical control over the unit, and then the watch commanders or the shift commanders, they would request you, hey, we're getting hit hard on evening shift. Can you
Okay.
guys come over to evening shift and help us out? Or if you work day shift, you can go and work. If they got a group of aliens across way out in the middle of the desert, it's better to have
Yeah.
somebody on horseback out there. So you go out there, and bike patrol, same thing. We used to have more agents on bike patrol than we do now. That's kind of just been cut back to, I guess, just staffing
Yeah.
and priorities and whatnot. But bike patrol was in town, and you could sneak right up on people real easy. It was very effective. There'd be all kinds of illegal activity going on that you could sneak up on, and the police department usually liked having us around as well.
When you say
Again, usually the shift commanders have tactical control of those units. They'll hey, can we have them for this pay period or this month or this season, and they'll be assigned to that unit. And I'm sure stations across the border don't all operate the same, but where I worked, that's what it was. Primarily, the field commanders, the unit commanders had tactical control of those units, and they use them as they needed them there, where they were getting you.
When you were talking about the farm and ranch stuff, what does that mean? Does that mean you're going out and like finding like illegal ranchers and farmers, or?
We would go on farm fields where there were people working, and we'd check their immigration status.
Is that still a common thing? Because it's like I said, I'm here in Southern California, and when you go out and you see like a field with a bunch of migrants working in it, because it's mostly who it is.
Right.
I mean, people joke about, it's like how many of those dudes are illegal, or I wonder where Border Patrol is. It's like, I don't know how many of them are. How often do you run into how often are you running into them that are illegal immigrants that you're having to detain and deport?
Right, and back then we used to do farm and ranch checks, and we stopped doing that. I bet it was in '98 or something. It's been a long time since Border Patrol.
Oh, okay, so that's not a thing anymore, really.
Yeah, that we don't do that anymore. The Border Patrol also used to do I-9 inspections, where they would go to businesses, generally agriculture type packing plants and that kind of stuff, and check immigration.
So is that something? Was ICE a thing then as well?
Yeah. Now all that kind of employer sanctions, all that stuff, Border Patrol doesn't do that anymore, and that's now ICE does that.
Man, it's one of those things. It's weird. It's like that we need immigrants to come over and work in the fields and stuff,
right?
And I think a lot of people mischaracterize how so obviously, I mean, people that listen to the podcast know that I'm more of a right-leaning guy. I keep a lot of the politics out of it, but I'm more of a right-leaning guy. And my argument here, I was talking to one of my professors in college, which is, it went about as well as you would think, about how, she was saying like, well, if we don't let illegal immigrants in, then your lettuce price is going to go up or whatever. And I'm like, it's kind of crazy that you're using the price of lettuce to justify the exploitation of human beings. I was like, because here's the deal. Like, and this is my opinion, you tell me what you think about it and how it kind of plays with, the Border Patrol's mission. My thought process is this. the border should be secured. We should know obviously who's coming and going across the border and stuff like that, and that these workers, these employers should be punished for allowing illegal immigrants to work there, because a couple reasons. One, when you're allowing illegal immigrants to work there, you're automatically bringing down the cost, or the labor price. So you're fucking everybody else that's trying to get a job, because why are they going to hire you for a minimum wage or a price that they don't want to pay when they could pay someone half the amount? So now we're allowing the exploitation of humans for cheap labor, which, on its own is bad. And, it's like the way to fix that is to continue to let immigrants come across, make the process quicker. But you have to secure the border and know who's coming and going. That way you don't run into these issues. And you have to prosecute these employers that knowingly do this. It's tough. And I know for some employers it's going to be tough, because if you question someone's immigration status, and you can also get in trouble and be sued for being discriminatory, because it's not like a lot of these people have social security numbers, like fake social security numbers and stuff like that, that will run through the system. But, like if you question it, you can, and you're wrong, now you can be sued for discrimination. So it is a tough spot for some employers, and that's not excusing them at all. But in my opinion, that's how I look at it. If we secured it and we knew who was coming and going, and also increased funding to the courts, because the courts, the border patrol, or not the border patrol, the immigration courts, I think we did a study on it in one of my classes, and I think the judges there have 5 times the amount of cases that the average judge has, in the country. Like the immigration courts are way overwhelmed. And if we just had more funding to that, had more judges, and we had the secure border, then we could actually have these people come in and make a decent wage and actually be able to send money back. If they want to send money back, it's their right. If they want to do that, whatever. But at least come over here and do everything legit. You know what I'm saying? And I don't know. What's your take on my little rant there, I guess?
And you have a lot of answers in there and a couple of questions. But no, and you're right. When I was in Tucson, whenever we get congressional delegates come down, or whoever come down to want to get briefed on our operation, it got to the point where we were asking them, we need to don't provide us more funding, but we need to fund those that we're a burden on. Whether and back then it was the same thing. It was the judges, the U.S. Attorney's Office, the U.S. Marshal's Office, all of those people that the Border Patrol is a burden on with our caseload, that support us to get the job done, the whole job done, not just the apprehension and prosecution, but to the detention, the prosecution, and then the removal. We need to fund all those. So you're right. Yeah, the judges, we were redlining that whole system for a lot of years. But you're right. And again, like I said, you have some of the answers. If we could secure the border so that we knew who was coming across, that'd be a big difference.
A major issue too is, let's be honest, not everyone that's coming across is going to work in a farm or going to do. Some of them are facetious people, some of them are, not good people. What kind of examples of like human trafficking did you see as a Border Patrol agent? Because I'll be honest, again, I live right here next to the border, and people that don't live next to the border don't get the same kind of news, because it's local news unless it's something absolutely crazy. It's only, I posted up on my Facebook page a couple weeks ago, they stopped a trailer that had like 40 or 50 people packed into the back of it, stuff like that. Yeah. What kind of cases like that did you see while you were, working in the field?
And I know you said human trafficking, and that's become something completely different, right? But I assume you mean human smuggling, human trafficking.
Well, I'd like to hear about both.
Okay. On the human smuggling, there was a day that me and another agent and a helicopter pilot pulled 31 people out of a van.
Out of a van, huh? All right.
A van. A regular Chevy
31
van.
People?
I pulled 13 people out of a Cadillac. So yeah, that's just on the in a vehicle part. Once you get to stash houses, what you see in a vehicle doesn't compare to see what you see in a stash house. Whether it's a mobile home that has 50, 60, 70 people that don't go outside because they don't want to be spotted, so they're stashed in there, and maybe they'll deliver some food to them, or maybe they won't. while they're waiting to be transported.
Oh, okay, so that's what it's just a holding area until the next leg of their trip.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Exactly. And you see that in most hub cities where they're close enough to the border where they could get them to semi-secure location for them, and then from there they're either waiting on payment or waiting on whatever logistics they're holding up on to get the alien to where they need to go.
That's crazy, man. Like, just how long? How long do a lot of the? Well, I guess you can't really answer how long the journeys take because it's depends on where they're going. You know, how many times did you see like actual human trafficking? You know, people that are being trafficked across the border against their will.
You don't see the actual, but usually people will tell you, "Hey, this happened to me before we came across," in order for them to bring me, or whether it's a sexual act or whatever, or some kind of abuse, or something that's being expected on the long end of it, whether they're going to be indentured servants type, if they're going to be committed to work for an individual. For
really, that's like a thing, huh?
To pay off.
Man, that's crazy.
Yeah.
You know, it's sad to see too, especially when you see now the issue is the amount of undocumented children that are coming across without their parents. And there's a big again, man, watching the news is very frustrating because they never tell you the full story. And it's like one of those things, it's like if you don't do the research and that's all you listen to, then how else, then that's all you know. So that's what you think. And I think the statistic is that the children that come across the border, 60% of them are either alone or with someone that is not a family member. Like that is an insane amount. What's that? I'm sorry.
Or a distant family member.
Okay.
Yeah.
How have you seen that? How did you see over your career? How did you see the handling of minors that were unaccompanied and families kind of morph into what we're doing today? Have they always separated? Has that always been a thing, or?
And it's with children we get them every now and then. And I had a case that turned out to be a big case that was actually, it was a sheriff's department call. They had stopped a vehicle and they couldn't figure out what was going on. They knew something was going on because the people were very nervous and they thought that they were smuggling some narcotics. So they called me. At the time I was a dog handler, and I went and searched the car and I didn't find anything. But in talking to the people, it was two ladies and two young girls, and the ladies were smuggling the two girls. Just the sheriff's deputy never made that connection, never asked them the right questions, just because he thought it was dope.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we went from there and prosecuted that case, and it turned out to be a very big case. It was 7 people went to jail.
Really?
For smuggling the two girls. Yeah, and there were a lot of material witnesses.
How old were the girls
involved? They were probably 6 or 7. They were claiming that they were twin sisters, and talking to all 4 of the people involved, it ended up not being the case.
Man.
Yeah, so you see that you see kids being smuggled, brought to be with their parent in the U.S. that's been here and established a home or whatever. But yeah, those are never fun to see or anything. But and the separating families and detention of families. Years ago, we didn't really have that problem because very rarely would we get a family that was from a country other than Mexico. And when we would detain them at a family housing unit in Texas.
Okay.
Just more recently, the influx changed to be families from countries other than Mexico, and we just don't have the facilities for that.
Why? What's the difference?
We couldn't contract the facilities to hold families. We just, there was nowhere for us to detain them.
So was the issue that there were too many people, or was there an issue that they weren't from Mexico originally?
Right, that they're not from Mexico. We can't return them to Mexico, or we can't return, let's say the mother or the father, one of them is a criminal alien that we need to keep. At that point, we could return the mother with the children if we're keeping the dad, or vice versa. If we're keeping the mom, we could return the father and the children to Mexico almost immediately. That's the case with somebody from another country other than Mexico, they have to go through the immigration judge and get deported and get transport papers back to their their country, their home
Okay,
country.
so you're just jumping through like many more hoops because it's not something that's
Right,
normal anymore.
right,
Okay. What countries
correct.
did you see like an influx from?
uh, Honduras, Guatemala, just the South American, just Central American countries south of
I've
Mexico.
again we were studying this in school and we were starting to see there was an increase in like Chinese nationals coming across, people coming from African nations and stuff like that. Was that something
Yeah,
that you saw?
not so much where I was at. Other the South Texas station saw a lot
Mm-hmm.
of that. The California stations saw some of that. Um, and I really don't know why that was that they chose those. Whatever the smuggling arrangements were set with smugglers in those
That's just what
areas.
suited them best, I guess, huh?
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Man, it's crazy. Did you see these caravans like we're seeing nowadays, or is this a newer thing?
Uh, no, that's a newer thing. And again, those are aliens from countries south of
Yeah.
Mexico. If you remember in the news, uh, yeah, and remember the volume that we just don't have the facilities to detain
Mm-hmm.
that volume for the extended period of
Yeah.
time.
Yeah, it's
You
crazy.
know?
They ride a lot of them ride. There's a train. I can't remember the name of the train,
Yeah.
but there's a train that rides like almost all the
Hmm.
way up, and then they got to get the rest of the way on their own. But and it's when you see these videos of this train, they're just hanging off of it, just
Yeah.
sitting,
Yep.
jumping on it. I just can't. It's mind-boggling being in the United States and seeing something like that. Like that would never be allowed. If a crowd of
Right.
people jumped onto a train and just started like
Yeah.
walking on top of the all the train cars and stuff like that carrying cargo,
Right.
there's no way that train wouldn't get stopped and that would be cleared off. But for some reason it's just a thing that's just I don't know, it is what it is, I guess.
Right. I think it's called the
Yeah,
Beast.
it is. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a good documentary about it. It follows this kid. He's like 13 or 14, and he left home. He left a note for his mom and said like, "Hey, I'm going to the U.S. to work" or something like that. And he's like 13 or 14,
Right.
and she was just like,
Right.
"Well, he did what he wanted to do," and like it was just like nothing. I'm like, that is insane. I mean, it's it's hard for people that have never been to a impoverished country to
Right.
understand the stuff
Exactly.
that people will do. And I am very sympathetic towards people that need to escape,
Yeah.
crime, gangs, poverty and stuff like that. But I also believe that people come to the United States because they think that they can get ahead here, that there's something positive for them here. And a lot of the stuff that makes the US a place for people that people want to come to is because of the law and order, because you can't be
Correct.
someone that just runs around shooting someone, or you can't run the mafia and like force people to give you money to run their business and stuff like that. Like
Right.
that's just not going to be accepted. Does it happen? Yeah, it happens, but we
Right.
take care of it, right? For the most part. Obviously there's
Right.
in a country of
Right.
330 million people, there's things that happen that's just out of your control. Um, and I think that the whole law and order thing is why the American dream kind of exists, and it's just mind-boggling to see people trying to advocate to get rid of that, to become more,
Right.
it feels so tribal, and it just gets worse and worse every day, obviously, the tribalism and stuff
Right.
like that. But yeah, I was just thinking like you have to kind of see an impoverished country to kind of understand why some of these people are coming here, and I get it, I do, but I also think that they should be doing it the right way, and I feel bad for the people that are doing it the right way.
Yeah.
And it's like, why am I going to sit here and wait and pay money to do all this stuff when I can just go across with these other people? It's
Right.
a tough thing. Um, Another, I think, misconception is there's a high amount of minorities that are in the Border Patrol, correct? Isn't it over 50% Hispanic?
Ooh. Uh, I would guess. Yeah. I don't know. But yes, I would say probably around that. I know they're making a big push, and you'll see it on Facebook. The I think the women just went over
Hmm.
5%,
Okay.
which doesn't sound like very many, but they're uh, they're highlighting that quite a
Yeah.
bit. Yeah, and it's I'm sure it, especially for the first female women agents, I'm sure it was tough going into pretty much an all male, an all man board patrol,
Yeah. Yeah.
and that was started in, I think the first female agent was like in
Oh,
'75.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, it's a tough job, man. I think it'd be a cool job. I think a lot of people will get out, like I said before, a lot of people will get out of the military and they look at that as a pretty good option. You know, I had a buddy who went through the whole process and I think he got a job offer, but at the same time, he got accepted to the MESEP program where he could go to college and become an
Oh,
officer.
oh
So
yeah,
he opted to
yeah,
stay in and do that.
yeah,
But, um, man, it's just tough. And in this very politically divided environment that we're living in right now, like the board, there's not so much focus on the border right now because of everything else that's going on. But you know as well as I
right.
do, the news cycle will shift, and it's going to go right
Oh
back to the
yeah.
border, probably right after the election and stuff like that. It'll probably shift back to that. But um, how have you seen like improvements in technology over the years, and how has that helped you guys, you know, do a better job at securing the border?
Um, in 25 years, we had when I first joined, we had the old night vision scopes, and we would put the starlight scopes we would put on the
Yeah.
M60s in the Marine Corps. That was pretty much what we had. We had one night vision
Hmm.
truck and a couple of those scopes for the whole station. We had some very primitive night vision goggles, and that was about it. And it was just a handful of them for all of us. Now we're getting not, I won't say state of the art, but a lot closer. Again, very similar to the Marine
Mm-hmm.
Corps. Whatever the Army was using 10 years ago, the Marine Corps is getting. That's kind of the same way with the board patrols, all trying to catch up. But they are doing a lot more. We've got search the science and technologies division now that's actively researching stuff and checking with vendors what's available. We've always tried to stick with off the shelf stuff, off the shelf technology, just to be able to replace it because it's the wear and tear out in the field is extreme. Again, just like the Marine Corps, it's a very dusty, dirty environment. Weather, as you know, weather impacts them, the cameras and all kinds of electronic sensor equipment
And
quite
you're
a bit.
using it every day,
Uh,
you
right,
know.
and you're depending on it a lot of times.
Yeah.
Um, uh,
What's so
yeah,
we haven't really talked about the about drugs coming across the border. What kind of different kind of shipments and like what did you see coming across and how was it shipped? Everybody's seen videos of like the bundles of pot, you know, and stuff like
right,
that. Nowadays the big thing is fentanyl. Have you was that something you
right.
experienced or ran into during your time with the border patrol?
I I did not catch any of that or experience any of that. None of my guys got it. Um, the marijuana, yeah, we used to get in the big backpack in the burlap
Yep.
backpacks. Um, an alien would carry 40, 50 pounds maybe,
That's
uh,
crazy.
and then you could have a group of them. And again, you're talking from the border to Interstate 10 is a 30-mile trek, um, and uh, hauling 50 pounds of dope on your back. And you'd also encounter it in vehicles, anything you can imagine. They've tried it in drive shafts, in uh, batteries that are operational, in motors that are operational, in tractor equipment, whatever you can think of, it's been
Yeah.
discovered in body carriers.
Did you
Mm.
what do you think is the most popular way of bringing it across and the most effective way?
Um, well, obviously, whatever's most effective, we haven't
Yeah,
caught
probably right.
yet. But
Or they've gotten some.
the
I was
tunnels,
about to say the
the
tunnels
tunnels,
are getting pretty wild.
it seems to be, yeah, they use them until we discover them, and at that point, who knows what or how much has gone through. But again, that's a big vulnerability that we use different resources and technologies to
Yeah, it's a
try and
game, man.
mitigate.
It's a chess game. You know, you got to.
That's all it is. That's all it is. Whether it's a
Mm-hmm.
tunnel, whether it's a new concealment method, whether it's a new fraudulent document, it's just you gotta always keep looking for the vulnerability and acting on it, trying to mitigate it. And again, it's
Did
you
you
pinch here and it
go ahead?
blows up over there. The fence is the same thing. You put up vehicle fencing and soon enough you're going
Yeah.
to need pedestrian fencing in the same
Did
area.
did you have any like notable drug busts you want to talk about?
Um, yeah, I had a couple good ones. There was one I got called on by another agent that he just couldn't
Mm-hmm.
find it. He couldn't figure out where it was, and it was a cowboy that was down there on the border with his pickup and trailer. Had a horse in the trailer, had his cow dog with him, and he had over 900 pounds mixed in with alfalfa. He had a 2-horse trailer, and he had a horse on one side and alfalfa on the other side, and it was under the alfalfa. But the guy was out in the middle of the desert with this guy and couldn't really
Yeah.
search the truck by himself, or truck and trailer by himself. Um, so he called me out there, and yeah, sure enough, I got my dog out, and then the dog alerted as soon as he got out and went right to it. And the most the thing that triggered the guy was the guy gave us the wrong name for the rancher that he said he was working for on the ranch out there where he was. So from there, the investigation started,
Yeah, and
and my buddy called me out.
you guys probably have
Like
pretty
I said,
good
I was
relationships with a lot of those ranchers out there, huh?
you develop it. Years ago, it was probably better just because of the volume of agents, volume of traffic across their property. After a while, a lot of the ranchers get tired of people leaving gates open or fences down or whatever. But it's a good working relationship generally with most of the public on the border, because we need them and they need us to be safe out there. It's
Yeah.
especially in the very remote areas where even most sheriff's departments don't have people patrolling the remote areas because there's not a lot of activity out there. So when something does happen, a lot of times the border patrol agents are the first to respond.
When you were out, you said you shifted from the one station out to Texas where you were along the Rio Grande. How did that change how you operated
Right.
as an agent?
When I got out there, I was a
Okay.
supervisor, so that was completely different. But the deployment of the agents is different. The river doesn't flow year round. They
Okay.
control it with a dam up here in New Mexico. They use it primarily for irrigation, and so they release it sometime generally around the end of March, and they shut it down in end of August, September, in there somewhere. So during that season, there's plenty of water in the river, and there's a lot of rescues involved. People try and cross the
Mm-hmm.
river and end up getting washed downriver. Um, and that while I was there, they were just putting up new fencing, so that was shifting that shifted the traffic patterns, and that shifted the way smugglers operated in the area. They had to adjust to the new fence, so that it was kind of a period of um,
Yeah.
new
Yeah, they gotta
operations
like
for them, I guess.
probe the lines and see where the weak spot is that they can get through and find the best
Right,
way to get
right,
across. When you seen people
exactly,
coming across,
right.
were they mostly swimming, or were they taking boats or rafts, or trying to get across that? It's not. Let's be honest. It's not like a lake. It's not very wide, right? So, were they generally just swimming
Right,
across and then getting caught in
right.
that current? Oh, okay. Well,
Walking across.
oh,
Yeah,
okay.
they'd walk
Gotcha.
across.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Man.
they would
Yeah. So you said
wade across, I guess.
you were
Yeah.
a supervisor for the Border Patrol Special Operations guys. What did that entail, and what kind of jobs does that portion of the Border Patrol usually work on?
And that's a special operations supervisor at a station, which you do a lot of the administrative work for the
Okay.
station, kind of like a gunnery sergeant, I guess. Um, you do a lot of and then you have the special units being the bike patrol or
Okay.
horse patrol or ATVs. And again, the special operations supervisor, you kind of have administrative, logistic control of them, and then the watch commanders, the guys that work the line, actually
Yeah.
deploy them on a daily basis as needed to mitigate whatever traffic patterns
How did you guys? Did you
are
guys?
arising.
I mean, do you guys? I know. I don't know how deep you can get into it, but like, what kind of intelligence gathering do you have? Like, do you do any work across the border trying to figure out like these cartels that are bringing drugs and stuff like that? You know, I assume there's some kind of like interdiction intelligence that's taking place prior to them getting to the border. Or am I off base on that?
No, there is, and you're right. There's only so much we can talk about on that, but a lot of it is done, and it happens on this side. A lot of the Mexican officials come over here for meetings. There are binational meetings uh, because they, to an
Yeah.
extent, want
Did you
to want
did
to work with us on that. Again, it's a share but verify or check and verify or that kind of deal. But there is quite a bit of work that goes on to gain intelligence while activities are
okay?
occurring still in
Gotcha.
Mexico.
Um, you know, if you could go back and do any one job that you did while you were in the border patrol, what would it be?
Uh, I really enjoyed being a
Okay.
canine handler. That was a lot of fun. Um, and that's kind of you take the dog home with you.
What kind of dog?
Uh, you become a.
Okay. Was
I
that
had
a
a
drug
black
dog or was it
Randale.
a? Okay.
Uh, yeah, drug
Yeah.
people.
Was
They
he good at
find
his
concealed
job?
people as well.
Yeah.
Yeah,
What's what was
real
his
good.
biggest? Did he
Yeah,
ever have any
yeah,
like
he was.
massive drug bust?
He had a good one where
Mm-hmm.
we knew a guy had beat us before in a fifth wheel, and we knew he would take a lot of just shake marijuana and sprinkle it on the
Oh.
floor just to throw the dogs off because they'd be alerting over the whole trailer. Uh, and he alerted from outside of the trailer, so I took him in, and sure enough, he alerted, and he was working the whole carpet and wouldn't get off of it. Finally, kept working them, and we took the truck and trailer and got it X-rayed at the port of entry, and they were like,
Yeah.
and that's when the X-ray machines were brand new, and the the user said, "Well, it looks like there might be something here, something," but and I was sure my dog was on it, and we searched the trailer on the outside, and sure enough, he confirmed that there was
Yeah.
marijuana in the walls of the trailer, and that's probably his
Bunch of
best
pot.
seizure um, with me. Yeah, and I don't remember how much it was, but
Yeah.
we
So that
caught a
made you
guy
feel
that
good
had
about
burned
it,
us
huh?
before.
It's a cat and
So
mouse
yeah,
game.
yeah, and he was real cocky. He was real cocky. He knew he was going to go down the road. Just oh no, I dropped some weed on my carpet,
Yeah.
but
No, that's
he didn't
funny.
go down the road that
I
time.
mean,
Yeah, and we also had one right before I was a dog handler. That was it was I think it was 12 backpackers that loaded up in a motorhome. Some of them had loaded up, and I caught some of them in the field. And our pilot went and made a vehicle
mm-hmm.
stop
Oh, really?
because they used to do that.
Like an aerial interdiction, huh?
And yeah, and yeah,
Yeah.
but we had excellent pilots. I'm sure we still do, but he was one of a kind. And from there, they did a controlled delivery, and it ended up in Anaheim, of all places, right by
What do you mean?
Disneyland.
What's a controlled delivery?
And the control they
Uh huh.
took the narcotic. We turned it over to DEA, the task force, and they took the narcotics
Oh.
to its destination. And it ended up they ended up getting a bunch of cocaine out there and a bunch of
Mm-hmm.
guns and a garage half full of money.
Did you run into people with
That turned
weapons
out to
very
be a
often
real
coming
good one.
across?
Not in
No.
Columbus, the area we work, not very much. or I never did
That's good. I
at
mean,
all.
that's
Not that I can
it
remember.
shifts, I guess, and it gets worse
Yeah,
depending on what the cartels and stuff are doing. You always hear
right.
about. Recently, I don't think it was
Yeah.
maybe 6 months, a year ago, something like that. I think an agent was fired upon, or they hurt. I don't know. I think they were shooting across the border, but it might have. Yeah, man, it's that's too
Lost.
bad. It's crazy. I think that was over in Texas in that area. I don't
Yeah.
think it was here in California. But what's like the what's the most like unique way that you saw someone try to smuggle people or drugs across? Like something that kind of makes you laugh, looking back at it.
Uh, uh, I think the drugs just when people would put them under their seat, thinking
Mm-hmm.
you weren't going to have them come out of the car to search it. Just up, you get a suburban, and it'd be in the back, just in plain view. And thinking that they weren't going to they weren't going to encounter anybody. Not that that's unique or anything, but like I said, you'd see it in
Yeah.
inside drive shafts, inside gas tanks. But when people just threw it in the back of their truck, thinking, nobody will check me, or in the trunk of their car, there you have
They're
100
they're
pounds of
making it easy
marijuana in the
for you.
trunk of a car. But yeah, but I think maybe when I was pretty new, I was working with another agent, and it was probably 2 or 3 in the morning in an area where just nobody moves around at that time, other than the ranchers are down
Mm-hmm.
and they're not up till 6 in the morning. And we encountered a little Mustang with two males in it, and they were driving to a city up the interstate to go look at a fifth wheel or a gooseneck trailer or something. And it didn't make sense why they were taking a car to go look for a gooseneck
Yeah.
trailer, to go look at buying a gooseneck trailer. And so we searched it, and the other agent told me, "No, man, they're good to go." And I said, "No, they're up to something." So we kept searching, and sure enough, in front of the
Man.
radiator, there was 26 pounds of marijuana. So yeah,
How
just kind of, yeah, I guess they were in the wrong car, or should have
now
planned their
that like
story a little
weed
bit
is
better. They'd have
becoming
gotten away with
legal,
it.
all over
But
the country, even though it's not federally illegal and they still obviously detain people and stuff for it, federal
right.
agents do. Um, how has that shifted your guys' enforcement of that, or has it at all? You know,
No, it makes a lot of people very angry, but no, we're still
yeah,
taking their
yeah.
marijuana from them. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's because nothing changed for us, and that's the case here in New Mexico. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Before we had dispensaries down south, they'd come down from Albuquerque, and if they didn't make their delivery, their legitimate delivery, down here in this part of the state, they'd be driving back up and go through the border patrol
Oh,
checkpoint
okay.
and lose their
Yeah,
product.
it's such a crazy thing. It's like,
Yeah,
I'm pro cannabis, obviously, or I don't know if it's obvious to you. For the people that watch the podcast, it's obvious, I think. Um, but I, I I wish the federal level and states would kind of get together on that, because it's ridiculous right now that we have people sitting in prison for many years for weed only, and I'm talking about just like weed, not your violent criminals that also had weed, but people that are sitting in jail and stuff for, I've been arrested for having pot, when I was a 18-year-old and stuff like that. And it's just crazy that now there's some places that people have it and it's fine. Like here in California, it's considered an essential business and didn't shut down during COVID. And in other places, you'll go to jail for it, and it's just, I don't know. It's just such a weird
right,
paradigm that law enforcement officials, have to deal with. Um, and I feel bad for
right.
the guys that have to deal with that. And I know there's probably a bunch that just, disagree with the fact that they're still arresting people for it. Um, did you see a lot of that though? Did you
Right.
see like the dissension, like where, like, why are we doing this? This is retarded.
No, and I think most agents are anti-cannabis because we still are
Yeah.
apprehending the volume that we are. But it's you run into so many people that just have their own personal use, and it ties up some time for the agents. When you're right, the state has legalized it, but the agents still have to do the job they have to do, whether they agree with it or not. But generally, I would say that agents don't mind taking the
I know a
cannabis or
lot of times when it's
marijuana from
coming up
whoever
from the
has it.
south in bulk,
Uh,
it's from the cartels and stuff like that, which adds that other obviously that
right,
adds another aspect to it, that not only is this like an illegal drug, federally, that it's a weapon, or not a weapon, a money source for a criminal gang. And so I totally get
right,
that aspect of it, which is why
right.
for me it's like, then why aren't we doing a better job decriminalizing it in the U.S. and making it easier for people in the U.S. to supply their own, because it's just a plant. It's not. So like, why quit?
Yeah,
Take away the black market or mitigate the black market by making it legal. Then you don't have to. You're not feeding the cartels cash with just buying weed from guys that are carrying 50-pound bundles across the border. Um,
and I'll give you the law enforcement side of that. Um, just and I discussed this with it's not really the
mm-hmm,
cartel's business to move marijuana. The
mm-hmm,
cartel's business is to move a commodity. So you take away the marijuana, take that out of the
yeah.
equation, they're going to come up with another commodity. And I'll give you an example. Here in March in El Paso, uh, I'll give you, I'll bet you can guess what they
What's
seized out of a tractor trailer. What was the highest in demand commodity
mask?
just the end of March? Toilet
Really?
paper, masks, and Clorox wipes. And they had Mexican label or Spanish labeled Clorox bottles that had been tampered with, that contained no, if any, very little Clorox. It
That's
was all
crazy.
water,
Yeah,
and it's just a commodity. Yeah,
yeah.
it's a commodity that's in demand. They're going to move, and that's the law enforcement side of that argument. Well, if you legalize marijuana, that'll maybe not shut down, but that'll bring those guys to their knees, or
Yeah, I
maybe
mean,
not. But
I don't think
but
it'll
it
bring them
won't.
to
They'll
their
just
knees,
find
but
a
I think
different commodity.
it'll not only
It's
will it take away some kind of funding for them, maybe even only temporarily until that void is filled by a different product, but it's also going to
right.
not it's also not going to affect Americans that are just, I'm sitting here drinking a beer and nobody cares about that, but if I'm back home in Indiana and I light up a J, then I can go to jail for it. But both of them you can consume on your own at home,
Right.
and it's like, how are we still putting people in prison for that? And you're right, like the commodity part is correct, but I think, I don't know, that's not just for me. That's not justification enough to continue jailing Americans for something like that. But it is what it is, and that's why we all have our own opinions on it. And your
Yeah.
opinion is
Yep.
shaped by seeing it
Yep.
in person, being smuggled, and you've seen the effects of it, which I can
Right.
completely
Right.
understand. That's going to give you a completely different perspective about it than someone like me who's just like
Right.
a casual user. So
No, and
yeah.
I've got a buddy that has it prescribed to him,
Oh, really?
and used to be a border patrol agent, and he struggled with it. He he won't he won't smoke it. He'll only
Yeah.
buy the edibles, and he struggled with it, and he's got several medical conditions, uh,
Yeah.
but he
Huh.
struggled with it and still does. Um, so yeah,
Did
it's
you,
shaped
here,
from what
shifting
we've
gears a
seen.
little bit, did you ever know any Border Patrol agents that worked the border in Canada?
Yeah, yeah. After 9/11, a lot of us got shipped up there to uh, help secure ports of entries
Yeah.
and
I know there's
the
areas where
very
you can
remote
just walk
areas.
across. There's not even a fence. Like, there's like a tree line, and then they cut a line in the
Yeah,
trees of where the border is, right?
right,
So,
right,
do you,
right.
what kind of like illegal operations do you see coming and going across the northern border, or have you seen, or do you know about? I guess if you've never worked up there.
And the period that I was there, we didn't see
Mm-hmm.
cross border activity. It was just there was some traffic that we worked in the communities of people that were there, that had been there for quite a while, harvesting apples and just doing agriculture work. Uh, but they say that back then there was a lot of cigarette smuggling, I
People
guess,
are
to avoid
crazy,
paying the
man.
taxes.
People are
Yeah, that
crazy.
kind of stuff.
Um,
Yep. Yeah, and there is some alien traffic, but
yeah,
very
yeah,
little compared to what we see on the
yeah. I
southern
don't know.
border.
It's I mean, because it's I don't know. They have a better economy. They have a better I don't know way of living. I
Right,
guess. So
right,
why leave that? I think is what most people.
yeah,
And if they do want to leave it, I think a lot of them will just move. They'll do it because it's not as hard to move somewhere when you're Canadian, probably.
right,
Um, so you sent me a
right.
list of some of the historic stuff that the Border Patrol has been involved in. So I'd like to give you the opportunity to kind of go through and talk about some of the stuff that you wanted to point out. So whatever points you wanted to make there, I'd like to discuss them.
Yeah, um, just there's been a lot of incidents in history that the Border Patrol has been involved with, and I think a lot of it stems
Mm-hmm.
from us being federal agents and can be easily sworn in as from a from a sheriff in a county up to the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
Marshals have sworn us in for different events, um, and that's stuff like during the '60s when they were having the desegregation issues. Border Patrol agents were there to escort James Meredith
Really?
to the University of Mississippi. There was a lot of rioting. There was a lot of protesting going on
Mm-hmm.
that later developed to rioting, and up to the governor. He didn't agree with it, and there were over 300 agents that got, or they were inspectors back then, that got deployed and helped get him to class his first day, and ended up driving him to class his first day in a beat up Border Patrol vehicle that
Oh,
had been
really?
damaged during the
That's
riots the day
crazy.
before.
So three. So
Yeah. So, and again, they got sworn in. They got sworn in as U.S. Marshals by the Marshal Service. And same thing with little
mm-hmm.
first grader Ruby Bridges. Same thing in New Orleans. There's there's pictures from back then showing agents escorting her, but they say the pictures aren't clear enough to tell if they're U.S. Marshal badges or Border Patrol agents that were sworn
Yeah,
in
I didn't
with Border
realize.
Patrol badges.
I
But
didn't realize the Border
we know
Patrol was
there were
involved
agents
in that.
deployed to that too. That,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. The first hijacking took place on a continental flight from Los Angeles to Houston,
Mm-hmm.
and landed to refuel here in El Paso. And by the time they refueled, word had gone back to President Kennedy, and he ordered the FBI to do whatever they could, whatever they took to keep it from going to getting back in the air, because the man and his son were saying they were going to take the aircraft and deliver it to Fidel Castro. And of all the people that were on the plane, um, Beard Bearden was a man's name, allowed all the passengers to disembark and only kept 4 hostages, and one of the
Oh,
hostages
really?
being a border patrol inspector, a
Huh.
border patrolman. And yeah, and as they were trying to take off, the border patrol agents and U.S. Marshals shot out the tires. The FBI shot out the tires. The One of the engines was disabled, and so the plane went off the runway. And that's when the border patrolman, during that incident, he was able to punch the guy out, knocked him out, and ended up having to go to the hospital to get his hand bandaged up. And then the FBI agent, they ended up letting an FBI agent on once the plane was disabled,
Okay.
and the FBI agent took down the man's son. So, yeah, but that was the first hijacking that was Border
That
Patrol was involved with,
that's pretty. That's pretty wild. That's like
and
that.
brought to an end.
That's that
You know,
history that you don't know
it's
unless someone tells you. It's like it's not common knowledge. That
right,
something like that went down.
right.
Y-
Yep. And they were involved in the
Mm.
L.A. riots after the Rodney King verdict. They got sent out there. I got sent out with about 400 other agents to Atlanta after they bombed the
Yep. I remember
Olympics
I was
in Atlanta
I
in
actually lived in
'96.
Chattanooga, Tennessee at the time,
Yep.
which is like maybe an hour away from that. And I remember the hoopla, I was a kid, but I remember like it
Right.
was like a big deal that the Olympics were coming to the U.S. And then I remember watching it on TV and
Oh
seeing
yeah, I
like the
bet.
explosion, or I didn't see it live or anything like that, but I remember all that happening. It's pretty wild,
Right.
man. I think what, you know,
Yeah.
I think what,
And the border patrol, that's a lot of good stuff. The border patrol's involved in pretty much every inauguration. The State Department uses them overseas
really,
for countries that we're rebuilding. Uh, there's a lot of contractors that go out there, but there are a lot of border patrol agents that are out there also rebuilding countries, rebuilding their border patrol,
mm,
border security teams and whatnot.
yeah, I remember there were
Yeah,
some
there's
border advisor
a lot of
teams in
activity that goes on.
Afghanistan when I was there that were doing some stuff like that. Yeah,
Right,
man. I think what people don't realize. So the border patrol got brought back into the limelight because of everything that was going on in Portland, and the decision to bring in the BORTAC guys to secure the courthouse, the federal courthouse there.
right,
Um, and I think what it has done is open people's eyes to, the reality that these guys are federal police officers. They're not just border patrol. They're not just standing on the border checking cars as they come through. They're federal officers that can be, forward deployed to different areas depending on what the situation. And I know the BORTAC
right,
guys are like the special operations guys of the unit or of the border patrol. And I was reading that they were actually the funny thing is, so people were upset that that BORTAC was up there. Why are they these militarized, blah blah blah, doing their thing because of their camouflage? They were wearing camouflage clothes. It's like, dude, who cares if they're wearing a blue shirt or a camouflage shirt? Who cares? It's like they're wearing a shirt. Who cares?
right.
That's my opinion. But anyway, but these BORTAC guys were that whole part of the organization was actually stood up to help quell riots and stuff like that, and do high risk takedowns of criminals and stuff. And we saw that. You saw the videos of that, of them taking dudes and detaining them in the vans, the unmarked vehicles, and driving off. And it's
Right.
the thing about that is that I think it's funny. People are like, this is the fascist state. This is how it begins. You're seeing it happen. It's like, I don't think in a fascist state they detain them, take their fingerprints, take their information, and then release them. Like all those people were released very soon after.
Yeah.
They were only detained because they were suspects in attacking a federal courthouse. But and it's unfortunate
Right.
that that's the only reason that a unit like BORTAC or an organization as a whole, like the Border Patrol, is even discussed. It's never anything positive. It doesn't seem like. And what's your take on that?
Right. Right. And there are some positives that come from time to time. You'll see it, and it's again. There's a lot of rescues that happen, uh, both in the desert and in the rivers,
Yeah,
because that's where we work the most. From time to time, you do see something positive, um, and the messaging, the board patrol, the PAO, they work extremely hard to message positive, whether it's community involvement things or
I actually follow the Border
rescues
Patrol's
or anything like
Instagram
that.
now. I've been following
Um,
them for probably over a year now, and they have some pretty good posts. They
oh,
do some. They show some
right.
pretty interesting stuff.
Yeah, and back to the BORTAC, you're right. Those people getting arrested and taken away in an unmarked unit or whatever, they're targeted individuals. They're people that for reason X, they BORTAC
They
is
were
told, hey, that guy needs
identified
to get
as somebody
arrested,
that was
and they
taking
go
taking
affect their
part.
offense.
And I also
Yep.
understand why they waited
Yep.
for them to get away from a crowd to detain them, rather than. I mean, you see these like massive crowds of people that are mobbing cops, and so I mean, I don't know if you were watching the news yesterday, but Rand Paul, after the RNC, after President Trump accepted the nomination for his um, re-election campaign. After that, Rand Paul, they left
Right.
the White House grounds, and I think he was going back to his hotel or going back to wherever he was going, him and his wife, and they were surrounded by protesters, and like the cops had to make like a little wall around them and maneuver them through the city while these like protesters are just chanting and yelling at them and, and stuff like that. And it's like, man,
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just crazy.
Yeah.
Like you see that kind of thing happen. And I don't know. So it's like, why would these agents try to wheel? You're not going to go into that little crowd and try to pull a person out and arrest them because you're going to get attacked. It doesn't make sense to do it. And not only are you endangering yourself, you're endangering the people that are in the crowd also. The other people too. It's it's such a touchy situation, man. And I understand the people on the side that say, the rights of Americans to protest and stuff like that, which I am 100% in agreement. Everybody should be do your protesting, do what you're going to do. But there's a difference between protesting and trying to burn down a federal courthouse. And
with protests, just like anything else, man, you should be able to do what you think you should be able to do until it impacts somebody else. And at that point, they're destroying a federal facility, and there's a federal protective service that the Border Patrol has worked closely with, because there are very few of them throughout the nation, and there are federal buildings in every major city. So we are called from time to time to help them, and we've had to call them. Hey, we got this going on in one of our buildings. Can you come clear it up? We've worked with them historically.
Yeah, man. I just it's just a weird situation we're in right now, and like I said, it's unfortunate that the only reason the Border Patrol is being spoken about is because it's in a negative light. And I think a lot of this stuff is being taken out of context, like a lot of stuff is in the news and stuff like that. We're getting a lot of half-truths and stuff about how things went down and things. And it's just unfortunate. And, man, I'm really glad you decided to come on the podcast today and talk about your time in the Border Patrol and some of the Border Patrol history. Is there anything else you want to cover before we cut this live stream?
No, I think that's good. I was
for sure, man.
Here and
I just try
conversation with you.
I try to get out and just have. There's not enough people that know about the Border Patrol or know about different aspects of law enforcement or the military. So I'm trying to expand my, group of guests to include some of these people that aren't getting a voice really in the mainstream media or in traditional outlets. And I'm also, if someone disagrees with what we've talked about, I'm totally down with having someone come on and talk to me about, have a debate about, some of the things that have gone down. And if you're one of those people, feel free to reach out to me and I'll facilitate that. But I think it's fair to get, both sides of the story out and get some background on how things are done, why things are done, who's doing them, and how things have improved, how things haven't improved. And having someone like you that has over 30 years of service to the government through the Marine Corps and the Border Patrol come on and discuss your, talk about your different things that you've done throughout your career and stuff like that is just, it's great for me. It's great for the podcast, great for the listeners, and now, your story is recorded, at least partially, we got some of it recorded. So forever, it'll be accessible and people can reach back and listen to it and kind of understand how things were done in this time. And so I appreciate you coming on and telling your story. Not, it's not for everybody and it does take up some time to do. And shout out to Tracy Offit for, hooking us up and linking us up. Super interesting conversation. He's good. He's good people. I plan on having him. I'd like to have him come back on here pretty soon.
Yes.
One of our mutual buddies just got out of the Marine Corps, so I think we're going to try to do a show together. So I always love having him come on. It sucks. I moved from Oceanside down to San Diego, so now I'm like 45 minutes from him. Before we were like nearby, I'd run into him at a brewery every once in a while, but now, you can't do that here with COVID-19 going on and stuff. So anyway, I won't keep you any longer, but I appreciate you coming on. And if there's, do you have any kind of social media or contact information do you want to put out there for people? You don't have to.
Cool. I have Facebook and it's under my name.
Adrian Aizpuru. No problem. And for sure, man. And for the people listening, make sure to check out my Instagram. It's at Former Action Guys and at J Kramer Graphics. I have those two Instagram pages. My website's jkramergraphics.com. Hit that up. Let me know if you need anything customized. And all right. Well, hey, thanks again, Adrian. Have a good weekend, and I'll talk to you later. Thank you.
You're welcome, man. Thank you. You have a great weekend as well. Take care.